I died for 7 minutes, and what Jesus showed me about the mark of the beast shocks me. May I bless you with discernment that opens your spiritual eyes, and that you may hear not my voice but the voice of God behind this testimony. Now I need to ask you something. Comment below from which city or country you are watching. This helps spread this message to more people, and if it touches your heart, send this video to someone you love. What you are about to hear now is not a theory or a story for entertainment. It is a prophetic warning about a global system that has already begun and that many Christians, including pastors, are accepting without realizing it. I know you will laugh, that some will make fun of you, but Jesus showed me what is behind the technology that everyone calls progress. And let me tell you something that no one else has the courage to say. The mark of the beast will not come as a monster. It will come as a solution, as help, as progress, and that is why almost everyone will fall. So, take a deep breath. Pay attention, because if you ignore this warning, you may not get a second chance. But if you listen to the end, I believe that God will show you exactly what you should do for yourself. Home for your children. I never thought I'd tell anyone this, honestly, until recently. I didn't even believe in near-death experiences. I've always been a practical and down-to-earth person, a nurse on call, a mother of 2, and the wife of a hard-working man. My life was simple, normal, full of routines and bills to pay, but on November 17, 2024, everything turned upside down. I had a car accident on the way home from a long shift at the hospital. I saw tons of blood, and all I remember was a bright light coming toward me. When I opened my eyes, it was no longer while the doctors tried to revive me. I was floating above my body. I felt no pain or fear, only a silent peace, as if I was being prepared for something. I clearly remember one of the rescuers, a young man, praying while squeezing my chest. I wanted to tell him everything was okay, that it didn't hurt anymore, but I couldn't. Something bigger was about to happen. A light began to take over everything, a living light that seemed to wrap me inside, and that's when I heard my name called Loina. It was a voice that was impossible to mistake, even though I had never heard it before. My spirit knew who it was. It was Jesus. I trembled inside. His presence was too intense, loving but firm. I felt like I was being scanned from the inside. He didn't accuse me, but everything in me was laid bare before him. Fears, mistakes, doubts. And yet, I felt loved. He looked at me tenderly and said, "Daughter, I've brought you here because time is running out. What I'm going to show you needs to be told. Many are sleeping." I tried to argue, "Lord, who am I? Just a nurse? Who will listen to me?" He just smiled, a calm but firm smile. "I've used the little ones to confuse the grown-ups. Their job is to tell. I'll take care of the rest." And in that moment, he took my hand. In the blink of an eye, we were somewhere else. It wasn't heaven, nor the present. It was something between the real and the prophetic. A city similar to ours, but different. People walked quickly, glued to their devices. I saw children with adult implants paying with the palm of their hand, artificial smiles. Everything seemed efficient, modern, and comfortable. But there was something wrong. It was as if people's souls were being molded without them knowing. Jesus told me, "Look, the enemy will deceive, even the chosen ones, if possible, and he will begin with the appearance of progress." And that's when everything began to make sense. That was just the first part of what I saw. What came next would be even denser, darker, lighter, the technology that captivates today. It will be the norm tomorrow, and those who don't open their eyes now may not have the strength later. And that's why I returned, not by chance, but with a mission. The city before me seemed normal, cars, buses, people in a hurry, shops open, but there was something strange about that place, a false calm, a frightening organization, as if everything worked perfectly, but without real life. Jesus told me, "This is the world to come, and few will realize what's really happening." I began to observe more closely. People no longer used wallets or cell phones. They passed their hands over sensors, and everything was resolved. They paid bills, accessed buildings, even bought food with a simple gesture. A small light flickered beneath their skin. Almost invisible, but there it was. It was as if technology had been integrated into the body, into everyday life, into the mind. A woman entered a coffee shop. She didn't take out her card, didn't speak to anyone, simply swiped her wrist over a panel. The coffee arrived seconds later. Everything was fast, clean, efficient, but empty. I looked at Jesus and asked with concern, "Sir, is this the mark of the beast?" He replied calmly but firmly, "No, this is the first thing, it's the pretty wrapping of the trap." At that precise moment, the images changed. I saw how it all began. Small chips were offered as a solution to the chaos: cards, passwords, documents, all gathered in a single device. They promised convenience, security, and agility. I saw families excited by the novelty. In fact, Christians were using the devices to read the digital Bible, make offerings, and even log into the churches. No one suspected anything. They said it was just technology. It doesn't require worship or a pact with anyone. But Jesus said something that gave me chills. The enemy is patient. He doesn't come kicking down doors. He insinuates himself like a snake. I continued watching, and the scenes became increasingly terrifying. Technology was evolving rapidly. Chips gave way to systems that monitor health, emotions, and thoughts. A device was capable of predicting diseases, controlling mood, and regulating sleep. It was presented as an extraordinary advance. But Jesus looked me in the eyes and said with pain, "Not everything that appears to be affection is love. Not everything that glitters is light." The enemy knows how to disguise his lies with the appearance of progress. People were giving away parts of their souls without realizing it. The next scene broke my heart. I saw parents taking their children to have the devices implanted. They were happy. They said, "This way, we'll be safer. We'll know where they are, how they feel." And I understood. The deception was disguised as protection. The ads focused on children. The promise was it was a simple matter to guarantee their well-being, but behind this promise lay a silent and evil purpose. Jesus told me, the enemy wants to reach the little ones because they grow up accepting what is imposed on them. They don't question it, they believe it is normal. My spirit began to burn. How was it possible that no one saw it? How was it possible that everything was sold as care when in reality it was control? The answer came even before I asked it. Jesus said, "Because you look with the eyes of the flesh, not with the eyes of the spirit. You only see the benefits, you don't see what is being lost." And then I knew this vision was not just a revelation, it was a call, an urgent warning. I had to tell them, even if they laughed, even if they called me crazy, because what would come next would be even worse. I thought I had seen enough, but what it was shown next was even more subtle and terrifying. The people who used these devices began to change. It wasn't something immediately visible. It was like an internal erosion. Small behavioral changes that over time formed a new kind of human being. I saw a couple arguing. They didn't shout. They didn't cry. It was as if their emotions were under control. Programmed and calculated. Neither of them reacted like real people. It gave me chills. The children were also different, less spontaneous, less empathetic. They didn't ask deep questions. They lacked spiritual curiosity. They grew up accepting what was presented to them as normal. I saw a classroom where the teacher praised a student for obeying a warning issued by the device itself. It was as if the device decided what was right and what wasn't, and the school reinforced this logic. The students learned that feeling too much was dangerous. Questioning was unnecessary, and trusting in God was old-fashioned. Jesus led me to a family scene. A seemingly normal dinner party, a sumptuous table, parents and children. Smiles, but something was wrong. The atmosphere was artificial, the conversations seemed scripted, the feelings heartless. It was like watching a play where everyone knew what to say but no one really meant it. "Don't they realize?" I asked, my heart sinking. Jesus didn't respond sadly. They only see the benefits: better health, an easier life, fewer conflicts. But they are trading free will for convenience, and when they realize it, it will be too late. The images kept coming. I saw people praying, attending church, reading the Bible, but something was missing. It was as if the gestures were empty. The words were still being spoken, but they had no roots. The worship was mechanical. The sermon seemed predictable, and spiritual discernment was fading. Slowly, no one felt the touch of the Spirit anymore. It was as if an invisible wall had been erected between heaven and people's hearts, and no one knew how or when. Jesus began. Then he explained to me, the sign will not be a threat, it will be received as a blessing. The enemy has learned that persecuting my people only strengthens them, so now he uses deception. He makes it seem like something good, something modern, something in that instant. I understood the true danger. The true signal wasn't just a chip or a number, it was a gradual replacement of spiritual consciousness, a subtle but definitive change, not in the body, but in the soul. But Lord, what's happening to spiritual leaders? Don't they realize? I asked. Distressed, the answer was harsh but sincere. Many remained silent for fear of appearing old-fashioned, others because they were also asleep. And there were those who were sincerely deceived, believing they were guiding the flock well. Then I saw pastors who encouraged the use of technology in religious services. They said it was just an adaptation to make life easier for the faithful, but unknowingly, they were leading people away from the true altar. I cried, not out of despair, but out of conscience. I understood why I had returned. Suddenly, the vision changed. It was as if everything had accelerated. The world, which had previously seemed stable, even under covert control, was beginning to crumble. I saw banks break down, power grids fail, food supplies disappear. The streets were in panic. People desperate. I searched for answers. Fear was at its peak. That's when Jesus told me, now, watch how the sign will appear. Not with violence, but with promises. Then I saw the screens everywhere in all the leading languages. World leaders appeared with serene faces, calm voices, rehearsed speeches, and spoke of a new era, a more secure, stable, and fair system. The problem, they said, wasn't the old technology, but the lack of updates. The solution, they said, was a new, faster, more complete, more integrated device. The proposal was simple: total security, absolute control, and world peace. People listened to this with shining eyes. The fear that had caused despair was now relieved with sweet promises. It was as if someone were offering a warm blanket in the middle of a storm. But it wasn't just the government. I saw pastors, priests, influential Christians. They all said the same thing. It's not the sign, it's just technology. They justified it with logic. There's no worship involved. No oath is required, so it can't be what the Bible warns about. And many believed it because it didn't look like a mark, it didn't look like a curse, it seemed like just another evolution, another step forward. But Jesus looked at me seriously and said, now I will show you what they can't see. At that moment, my spiritual eyes were opened. I saw what was hidden behind the update when people accepted something dark and subtle. It enveloped their spirits. It wasn't screams, it wasn't possession, it was silence. A shadow entered gently, occupying a space that had previously been sensitive to God's presence. They continued going to church. They continued praying, but something essential was lost. It was as if the connection had been reduced to noise. Prayer became routine. Praise became a habit. Repentance was a distant memory. Jesus explained to me, the enemy has discovered that persecuting my people only strengthens them. So now he seduces them. With comfort, with logic, with a good presence. People weren't being forced. They were quick to accept. The media extolled the benefits. Politicians assured stability. And religious leaders, with good intentions, affirmed the need to maintain the testimony. I saw families divided. Parents convincing their children to accept children. confronting resistant parents. Churches splitting in two. It was the beginning of a new separation. But Lord, I asked with a heavy weight on my chest, how can I warn someone about an evil that seems so true, so logical? And he replied, human logic does not recognize spiritual deception. Therefore, whoever does not have communion with me will not see the danger. Many will be guided by good intentions but will walk towards spiritual death. They believe they are protecting their families. They only surrender their hearts to the control of the enemy. It was then that I understood that evil's greatest disguise is the good it claims to offer, and that not every smile is sincere. The next part of the vision crushed me inside. Jesus took me to a school. From a distance, it looked like a modern school with cutting-edge technology. Happy children in impeccable uniforms. But when I looked closely, I saw what was really being taught. There, the children weren't just learning math, science, or history. They were being instilled with a total dependence on devices. Every activity, every class, every behavior was regulated by a system that proclaimed itself intelligent. There was no room for spiritual creativity, sensitivity, or even faith. I saw a child hesitate before pressing a button. His implant seemed confused, as if his conscience was struggling with something. The teacher noticed, approached, and said, "Trust the system. It knows what's best." The boy obeyed. That tore me apart inside. Then Jesus told me. He explained, the enemy wants the little ones because they can't resist. They grow up believing that what is killing their spirit is normal. An entire generation is being trained to love comfort and despise regret. I remained silent. The pain was too great to describe. Then they took us to a daycare center. Babies could barely walk and already had implants under their skin. Proud parents. They filmed them and shared them on social media. The message was always the same. We are protecting our children. There were even cartoons with characters with chips teaching children how to connect with the safe world. And then I understood, the war was no longer a matter of territory, of money politics, it was a matter of minds, of souls, of innocence. The new generation was born within the system without knowing what it was like to live free from its influence. Jesus then took me to a children's church. Colorful chairs, animated music, videos on the giant screen. The children participated, smiled, and danced, but what was preached lacked depth. There was no cross. There was no repentance, was just a happy faith adapted to avoid confrontation. Everything was filtered through devices that monitored their emotional reactions. When a child started to get too emotional, an alert would go off and the music would change to something lighter. They taught that feeling God's presence was something uncomfortable, out of control, and to be avoided. I looked at Jesus with tears in my eyes. They will never truly know the Lord. They will grow up thinking that praying is like pressing a button, that listening to God is like downloading a notification. And he responded, "That's why you need to speak up. They can still be reached, but they need to see the danger. Parents need to wake up, teach with truth, and plant roots in faith because time is running out." It was at that moment that I saw many sincere but spiritually blind parents allowing all of this, believing they were good providers. The vision ended with a scene I have never erased from my mind, a little girl of about 7 years old sitting alone on the floor holding a paper Bible. It was torn, old, but she read, she cried, she felt no device stopped her, nothing blocked her, and there I saw a spark, a hope, because even in the midst of darkness, God always keeps a remnant, a child who still listens, a parent who still teaches, a home that still prays, and I understood that the future is not lost but is being fought for now, in the present. My vision changed again. Now I saw the entire world, every country, every culture, every people adapting to the new system. The new update was no longer a suggestion but a requirement. Governments began to condition benefits on the use of the new implant. In some places, only those who had completed the integration could enter hospitals. In others, banks no longer operated without the new code. Schools began to require children to be registered in the system, and those who refused were marked not with ink but as absent. They were excluded, erased, and saw headlines on the screens. Security was reinforced with new technology, families protected by an intelligent system. Update now available for 80% of the world's population, but among these news items, other news items appeared discreetly. Man loses jobs for refusing an implant, family banned from entering the supermarket, child unable to attend school without being enrolled. The pattern was the same everywhere. First they offered, then they recommended, then they demanded, finally they punished. It was the old method of fear disguised as progress. The hardest thing to see was what happened inside the churches. Communities that had once been united began to fracture. Pastors were divided. Some, with good intentions, encouraged the faithful to accept the update. They said it was a way to maintain social witness, which would be scandalous. Refusing would damage the image of the faith. Others, more cautious, warned, but they called them radical conspiracy theorists, fanatics, and the division grew like a crack in the earth, silently separating the body of Christ. I saw brothers who prayed together and now accused each other. Some said, if you don't accept, you will damage the mission of the church. Others responded, if we accept, we will lose our identity. The atmosphere was tense and suspicious. It was as if faith had become politics, strategy, appearance. Jesus looked at me with deep regret and said, the enemy uses even good intentions to divert mine. Many will fall, not out of malice, but out of fear. They believe they are prudent, but in reality, they are negotiating the truth. The persecution wasn't physical, it was social, financial, psychological. I saw families pressured by neighbors, co-workers, and even relatives. Are you going to let your child skip school? Are you going to risk your family's health? Are you going to isolate yourself because of an outdated belief? Every sentence was an arrow. Every argument was a trap. And many gave up, not out of weakness, but out of loneliness. They didn't want to lose everything. They didn't want to be different. And little by little, they gave up their souls in exchange for comfort. At the end of the vision, I saw a huge church full of people, giant screens, music, people smiling. But Jesus told me, look. When I looked with my spiritual eyes, I saw an empty temple, a lit stage, but no one present. Cold hearts. Automatic prayer, empty praise. And then he said something that it had an impact. Not in all the meetings I attend where there is worship of appearances, there is no true covenant, and without an alliance, the people are lost, even within a temple. And in that moment I understood the greatest sign of loss was not the silence of the world, it was the silence of God. The next scene was the quietest of all, and perhaps that is why it was the most painful. I saw people who were once filled with the Spirit, now walking as if on autopilot. They kept going to church, they kept saying God is good. But something had died inside them. It wasn't their bodies, it was their flame, their fire, their essence. It was as if their faith had been extinguished and they didn't even realize it. Prayers became repetitions, praise became a habit, and repentance became a forgotten concept. Jesus explained to me the sign is not just a physical mark, it is a spiritual change, a silent exchange between truth and control. When you accept something profound, your mind changes and reorganizes. Your soul weakens. Discernment disappears like a candle that goes out. Slowly, and I saw this. I saw. To men who once preached with passion, now repeating lifeless, prefabricated sermons. I saw women who once wept in the presence of God, now smiling with empty eyes. I saw young people who before searched, now only consumed religious content. The terrifying thing was that no one noticed. Everyone believed they were fine, after all. They kept talking about Jesus. They kept quoting verses. They kept singing hymns, but there was a void, a silence behind the words. It was like listening to a song without melody, a prayer without weight, a praise without answer. And then Jesus said, "They move away from me," without realizing it, like a frog in lukewarm water that slowly dies. They no longer feel my presence, but they believe they are with me because they are still in the temple. I saw religious leaders trying to justify everything. They said it was a new, more rational spiritual phase, more adapted to the modern world. Some created new methods of worship based on digital stimuli. They said it was more efficient, more organized, more accessible. But Jesus showed me what was behind the curtain. These new ways didn't lead to heaven. They led to apathy and distancing. They led to divine silence. Everything was beautiful on the outside, but inside it was dry and arid, cold like painted tombs. But Lord, I asked, with pain in my soul, don't they miss your touch? Don't they realize something has changed? And he answered me with tears in his eyes. They have lost their sensitivity. What was scandalous now seems acceptable. What was sacred is now a choice. What was sin is now an opinion. I keep talking, but they no longer listen. And then he showed me a symbolic scene. A dusty Bible locked in a glass case was remembered and admired, but no longer read with fear. At that moment, I felt something strong, a pain that didn't come from me. It was as if it were what heaven feels when the earth forgets. Jesus told me, illusion not only steals freedom, it steals intimacy. People believe they're still with me because they follow the rituals, but their hearts are already far away. I understood then that the worst form of deception is not to reject the truth outright, it's to believe you still have it but have already exchanged it for something that only seems true. The vision changed again now. Jesus showed me a small group, very small, but different from anything I had seen before. They didn't shine on the outside, they lacked status and resources. Some were dirty, tired, and exhausted. But there was something in their eyes that lit up the room. Living faith, real presence, a burning spirit. They were the ones who resisted. They said no when everyone around them said yes. And although they were excluded by the system, they were connected to heaven like never before. These people could no longer shop in traditional markets. They couldn't enroll their children in public schools. Many were fired. Some had their accounts frozen. They were called radicals, crazy, disconnected from reality. But they didn't complain. They didn't grumble. There was a peace in them that the world couldn't give or understand. I saw a group gathered in a simple shed. They prayed, sang, shared food, and everything carried the real presence of God. The Spirit was there as in the days of the events. Jesus pointed to them and said tenderly, "These are my faithful." They kept their eyes open. They studied my word. They recognized the lie, even when it came wrapped in truth. And then he showed me that they were not alone. There were networks among them. Hidden communities. Brothers and sisters who helped each other. Resources that multiplied like in the desert. Rice that never ran out. Bread that multiplied. Medicines that appeared as if by miracle. Without luxuries but without abandonment. I educated children from these groups in the love and fear of the Lord, learning to listen to the voice of God and discern good from evil. I saw strong adolescents praying for other young people, leading simple services filled with God's glory. I saw marriages restored, healings, baptisms in hidden places. They had lost the world but had gained heaven in life. I saw smiles amidst tears. I saw courage in the midst of loss, and then I understood that resilience wasn't a protest, it was a covenant. Then Jesus told me something that left a deep impression on me. I never stopped caring for my own. Just as I held Elijah by the stream and fed Israel in the desert, so I will care for those who remain in me. No matter how great the crisis, what matters is the firmness of faith. And then I saw angels surrounding these homes, not as mystical figures, but as sentinels, guardians with outstretched wings, protecting each home. Every step, every prayer, was a silent but constant, supernatural care. Then I understood that resilience wasn't made with human strength, it was made with surrender, with intimacy, with renunciation. They weren't superheroes. They were ordinary people, but they had a faith. Unbreakable, and Jesus concluded, they won, not because they fought with their own hands, but because they fully trusted me, because even in the face of fear, They decided to believe, and in that moment, a truth pierced my soul. Those who resist the system for love of Christ may lose everything here, but they have already won everything in heaven. Jesus looked at me seriously. We had already seen chaos, manipulation, spiritual coldness, false security. Now he would teach me to recognize the first signs, the subtle clues that appear when everything seems normal. Daughter, many will be deceived because they have not learned to observe, but those who are vigilant, those who remain in the Word, will know. I will give you 4 signs. Keep this, teach it, speak clearly, and then the scene changed again. Now I saw a line, an invisible boundary, and each undiscerning step took me further away from the truth. The first sign was simple but profound, the promise of being better than God created us. I saw ads that said, improve your mind, overcome your emotions, reach your best version with our technology. I saw people who believed they needed a chip to think better, feel less, and perform more. Jesus told me, everything that says you'll only be complete with something external. Denying what I've already placed in you is the seed of deception. And then he concluded, the enemy wants to sell you an artificial version of what I gave you for free identity. The second sign was more insidious, the convenience that begins as a choice and becomes an obligation. I saw people join by choice, then pressured and finally forced. If you don't have it, you can't work. Without it, you can't enter the building. Your child will be excluded. Jesus said, this is how the brand begins, not with imposition but with emotional and social blackmail. It will seem illogical and rational, of course, but those who know me will understand the spirit of the system, and that's when I understood what seems like freedom. It may only be the beginning of an invisible prison. The third sign was the saddest, the direct attack on children. I've seen schools, apps, cartoons, toys, everything that teaches children to trust technology more than their parents. I've seen children who used to pray stop praying. Children who used to sing praises switch to voice commands. Jesus said, the enemy wants to mold the little ones because they haven't yet learned to discern, and if parents get distracted, they will lose their children within the home. The strategy was clear, replacing the teaching of the faith with fun, modern, and lethal digital indoctrination. The fourth and final sign was the quietest, the cooling of spiritual life. I saw Christians who once prayed with passion, now they prayed with haste, they fasted for brokenness, now they fasted out of fashion, they read the Bible for guidance, now they read it out of obligation. When prayer becomes a burden, praise becomes noise and the word becomes routine, it is a sign that something has happened. Entering my heart unnoticed, Jesus